centuries, kings measured their power by the size of their armies. One Ottoman Sultan would prove that loyalty was far more valuable than numbers. In the middle of the 15th century, Europe stood divided. Powerful kingdoms competed for land, wealth, and influence, while the Byzantine Empire, once the greatest power in the Mediterranean, had been reduced to little more than the city of Constantinople behind its towering walls. The last Roman emperor waited for a siege that everyone knew was coming. Across the Bosporus, however, another power was rising. The Ottoman Empire had already conquered vast territories across
Sultan's army
Anatolia and the Balkans, but its young ruler dreamed of something far greater. Sultan Mehmed II did not simply want to expand his empire. He wanted to build a state so powerful that no enemy could ever threaten it again. To achieve that goal, he understood one critical truth. An empire could not survive if its army served powerful nobles instead of the throne. Every rebellion, every act of disobedience, every divided loyalty weakened the state from within. If the Ottomans were going to dominate Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, Mehmed needed soldiers whose loyalty belonged to only one man, the Sultan himself. That vision would give birth to one of history's most disciplined and feared military forces, the Janissaries. The story of the Janissaries did not begin with Mehmed. Decades earlier, the Ottoman rulers had created a small corps of professional infantry unlike anything seen in medieval Europe. At a time when most kingdoms depended on feudal knights or temporary levies, these soldiers lived, trained, and fought as a permanent standing army. Unlike ordinary troops, they received regular pay from the state. Unlike feudal warriors, they answered directly to the Sultan. Unlike mercenaries, they were forbidden from serving anyone else. Even in their earliest years, the Janissaries showed extraordinary discipline, yet they were far from perfect. As their influence grew, they occasionally demanded higher wages, resisted authority, and even threatened unrest inside the empire. Their military value was unquestionable, but their loyalty was not yet absolute. Everything changed when Mehmed II returned to the throne. Having learned painful lessons from political conspiracies and court rivalries, the young Sultan knew he could trust only an army that depended entirely on him. He immediately began reshaping the Janissary corps into the very foundation of Ottoman power. Recruitment became stricter. Training became harsher. Discipline became relentless. Every aspect of a Janissary's life would now be controlled with military precision. Where would these elite soldiers come from? The answer remains one of the most unusual chapters in military history. Instead of recruiting only from Ottoman families, the empire looked beyond its own borders. Across the Christian villages of the Balkans, selected boys were taken through a system later known as the Devshirme. To many families, it was a heartbreaking separation. To the Ottoman state, it was an investment in the empire's future. Boys left behind their homes, languages, and childhood identities. They entered an entirely new world. There, they received years of education, military instruction, religious training, and physical conditioning unlike anything found elsewhere in Europe. Only the strongest, smartest, and most disciplined recruits advanced. Failure meant removal. Success could change a life forever. Some graduates became elite Janissary soldiers. Others rose even higher, serving as governors, generals, advisors, and even grand viziers, the highest office beneath the Sultan himself. It was a system designed not around noble birth, but around ability and absolute loyalty. The Sultan was no longer surrounded by ambitious aristocrats seeking personal power. Instead, he commanded men whose entire future depended on the empire they served. It was a revolutionary idea. Before long, Europe would witness its terrifying results.
Ancient walls begin to crumble.
The walls of Constantinople prepared for the greatest siege in medieval history. Thousands of disciplined Janissaries stood ready beside their young sultan. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Soon, the world would learn why these soldiers would become the backbone of Ottoman military power for centuries. The Janissaries were unlike any army Europe had ever seen. Their strength did not come from noble blood, inherited titles, or wealthy families. It came from a system that transformed ordinary boys into extraordinary soldiers. To the outside world, it seemed impossible. How could an empire recruit children from conquered Christian lands and turn them into warriors willing to sacrifice everything for the Ottoman Sultan? The answer lay in one of the most controversial institutions of the medieval world. Devshirme, often called the Child Levy. Beginning in the late 14th century and expanding under Sultan Mehmed II, Ottoman officials traveled through Christian villages across the Balkans. Every few years, they selected healthy, intelligent, and physically strong boys, usually between the ages of 8 and 80. The selection process was far from random. Officials examined each child carefully. They looked for intelligence, physical endurance, good health, strong character. Only those who met the empire's demanding standards were chosen. For many families, the day the Ottoman officials arrived was unforgettable. Some parents desperately tried to hide their sons. Others accepted the decision, believing their children might one day achieve a life impossible in their own villages. Once selected, the boys began a journey that would change their identities forever. Left behind their homes, their language, and often even their family names. Crossing mountains, rivers, and forests, they traveled toward the heart of the Ottoman Empire. Their destination was not a battlefield. It was a school. These schools were unlike anything medieval Europe had ever created. Discipline governed every moment. Every movement had purpose. Every mistake carried consequences. Recruits first learned the Turkish language and the customs of the empire. They converted to Islam and were taught that loyalty to the Sultan came before everything else. Then came years of physical conditioning, long march, weapons training, archery, swordsmanship, horsemanship, endurance exercises, strict daily routines.
The Sultan's
Nothing was
army
left to
advances.
chance. The instructors believed that true strength was not found in muscles alone. It was built through patience, discipline, and absolute obedience. Not every recruit followed the same path. Those who demonstrated exceptional intelligence were sent to the prestigious Endrian Palace School, where they studied administration, diplomacy, mathematics, languages, military strategy, and leadership. Many of these students would never carry a sword into battle. Instead, they would become governors, admirals, judges, diplomats, and even grand viziers, the highest officials beneath the Sultan himself. Meanwhile, the strongest and most determined recruits entered the Janissary corps. Their lives became even more demanding. Janissary barracks were built on strict order. Every soldier lived according to precise rules.
The Sultan's
ambition
army
meant nothing.
advances.
That discipline meant
Ancient walls begin
everything.
to crumble.
Uniforms had to be spotless. Weapons had to remain perfectly maintained. Training never truly ended. Even during times of peace, the Janissaries drilled constantly, hour after hour, day after day, year after year. While many European armies gathered only when war began, the Janissaries remained a permanent professional force, always ready to march at a moment's notice. This single advantage would soon change the balance of military power across 3 continents. European rulers still relied heavily on feudal knights, temporary militias, and mercenary companies whose loyalty often depended on money. The Ottoman Sultan commanded something entirely different. A standing army that existed for only one purpose: to serve the empire.
The
To obey
Sultan's
without
army
hesitation.
advances.
As the years
Ancient
passed, the
walls
Janissaries
begin to
became
crumble.
more than elite soldiers. They became a symbol of Ottoman authority itself. Wherever their distinctive white headgear appeared, Enemies understood that one of the world's most disciplined military forces had arrived. Soon their greatest test would come. In 1453, Sultan Mehmed II prepared to attack the most heavily defended city in Europe. Behind enormous stone walls stood Constantinople, the last capital of the Byzantine Empire. For nearly 1,000 years, countless armies had failed to capture it. Now, the Janissaries would attempt what many believed was impossible. For nearly 1,000 years, Constantinople had stood unconquered. Its massive triple walls had defeated Persians, Arabs, Bulgarians, Rus, Crusaders, and countless other invaders.
The Sultan's army advances.
Generation after generation believed the city was simply impossible to take. In the spring of 1453, 21-year-old Ottoman Sultan believed otherwise. Sultan Mehmed II had spent years preparing for this single campaign. Nothing was left to chance. Enormous cannons were cast to shatter walls that had protected the Byzantine capital for centuries. Hundreds of ships were assembled. Thousands of engineers, craftsmen, and laborers worked day and night to prepare the greatest siege the medieval world had ever witnessed. Despite all these preparations, Mehmed understood one crucial fact. Cannons could break walls. Ships could blockade harbors. Only disciplined soldiers could capture a city. The soldiers were the Janissaries. Like the irregular troops that formed much of the Ottoman army,
the Sultan's army
Janissaries remained calm and organized
Ancient
under
walls
pressure.
begin to crumble.
They did not rush into battle. They waited. They followed orders. Every movement was carefully planned. April 6, 1453, the siege began. For weeks, Ottoman artillery pounded the mighty Theodosian walls. The thunder of massive cannons echoed across Europe. Stone towers that had survived centuries of warfare began to crack. Day after day, night after night. Bombardment never stopped. Inside Constantinople, Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos refused to surrender. Despite commanding only a few thousand defenders, he inspired soldiers and civilians alike. Greek citizens stood beside Genoese and Venetian volunteers. Priests prayed on the walls. Merchants became soldiers. Every citizen understood the truth.
The Sultan's army
Constantinople fell.
Ancient
The Byzantine Empire would cease to exist forever. Meanwhile, outside the city, the Janissaries waited patiently and refused to waste his elite troops in reckless attacks. Instead, less experienced units tested the defenses while engineers searched for weaknesses. Every failed assault became a lesson. Every damaged wall became another opportunity. Then Mehmed made one of the boldest decisions in military history. The Byzantine navy had blocked the entrance to the Golden Horn with a massive iron chain. Most commanders would have accepted defeat at sea. Mehmed chose another solution. Under the cover of darkness, hundreds of Ottoman soldiers dragged dozens of warships across. Greased wooden logs placed over the hill surrounding Constantinople. The sun rose.
Sultan's army advances.
Defenders looked toward the harbor in disbelief.
Walls begin to crumble.
And ships were already inside the Golden Horn. The defensive barrier, once thought impossible to overcome, had been completely bypassed. The psychological impact was enormous. The city's defenders now faced attacks from multiple directions. As the siege entered its final weeks, Ottoman artillery intensified. The walls weakened further. Food supplies inside the city dwindled. Exhaustion spread among the defenders. Then came the final assault. Before dawn on May 29, 1453, waves of Ottoman troops advanced toward the breached walls. The first attacks were designed to exhaust the defenders. The second wave forced them to commit every remaining reserve. Only then did Mehmed unleash his greatest weapon, the Janissaries. Moving in disciplined formations,
the Sultan's
advanced through
army
smoke,
advances.
broken stone, and
Ancient
burning
walls
barricades.
begin to crumble.
No panic, no confusion, only absolute discipline. Fighting was brutal. Every street became a battlefield. Every gate became a struggle for survival. Emperor Constantine XI is believed to have thrown aside his imperial insignia and fought alongside his soldiers until the very end. He was never seen alive again. By sunrise, the Ottoman banners flew above Constantinople. After more than 11 centuries, the Byzantine Empire had fallen. In Europe, the shock was immense. The Ottoman Empire, it marked the beginning of a new era. And standing at the center of that historic victory were the Janissaries, the elite, soldiers whose discipline had helped accomplish what countless armies before them had failed to achieve.
The Sultan's army advances.
Conquest transformed Mehmed forever.
Begin to crumble.
History would no longer remember him simply as Sultan Mehmed II. It would remember him as Mehmed the Conqueror. Victory brought something unexpected. As the empire expanded across 3 continents, the Janissaries grew stronger, richer, and more influential than ever before. Soon, they would become far more than soldiers. They would become one of the most powerful political forces in the Ottoman Empire itself. The fall of Constantinople changed the course of world history. For the Janissaries, it was only the beginning. The Byzantine Empire gone, Sultan Mehmed II inherited not just a magnificent city, but the capital of a rapidly expanding empire. Constantinople soon renamed, Istanbul became the political and military heart of Ottoman power. There, the Sultan turned his attention outward.
Ancient walls begin to crumble.
Anatolia, Black Sea, the Mediterranean. Every new campaign demanded an army capable of marching farther, fighting longer and adapting faster than any opponent. At the center of every major expedition stood the Janissaries. Unlike most medieval soldiers, they were professionals. War was not something they prepared for once a year. It was their entire way of life. Every morning began with strict discipline. Weapons were inspected. Armor was maintained. Formation drills were repeated endlessly. Every movement had to become instinct. A single mistake in battle could destroy an entire formation. Failure was never acceptable. Inside their barracks, life followed almost monastic rules. Janissaries lived together, trained together, and ate together.
The Sultan's army advances.
Their military organization reflected this unique culture. Each company, known as an orda, centered around a large cooking cauldron. For outsiders, it appeared to be an ordinary piece of equipment. To a Janissary, it represented unity, loyalty, and honor. As long as the cauldron stood upright, discipline remained intact. Overturning it became a symbol of open rebellion, a tradition that would later carry enormous political meaning. Their commanders even carried titles inspired by the military kitchen. It was an unusual system, but it reinforced one powerful idea. Every soldier belonged to one family. The Sultan's family, religion also played an important role. Janissaries developed close ties with the Bektashi order, a mystical Islamic brotherhood that emphasized loyalty, discipline, and spiritual devotion. Ceremonies, blessings, and traditions strengthened the bond between the soldiers and their corps. It gave them not only military purpose, but also a shared identity. Yet faith alone did not make them feared across Europe. It was their skill on the battlefield. Unlike many European armies that still relied heavily on armored knights, the Janissaries embraced change. They mastered the composite bow with deadly accuracy. As firearms improved, they became one of the first standing infantry forces in the world to adopt gunpowder weapons on a large scale. Arquebuses and early muskets gradually joined swords, axes, and bows. While many European commanders still debated the value of firearms, the Ottomans were already building an army around them. This willingness to innovate gave the empire a decisive advantage. Again and again, the Janissaries proved their worth. They fought during the conquest of Serbia. They helped secure Albania. They strengthened Ottoman control across the Balkans. For wherever resistance appeared. Disciplined Ottoman infantry marched at the center of the campaign. Under Sultan Selim I, the Janissaries faced a new enemy, the powerful Safavid Empire of Persia. In 1514, at the Battle of Chaldron, Ottoman firearms and disciplined infantry shattered the Safavid forces. It was one of the clearest demonstrations that gunpowder warfare had permanently transformed the battlefield. Only a few years later, under Suleiman the Magnificent, the Janissaries marched once again, this time toward the Kingdom of Hungary. 1526, at the Battle of Mohacs, the Ottoman army crushed the Hungarian forces in less than 2 hours. Victory stunned Europe.
Sultan's army advances.
Central Europe's strongest kingdoms had collapsed with astonishing speed. Observers across the continent began asking the same question. How could one empire defeat so many different enemies? Again and again, the answer pointed toward the same elite force, Janissaries. The reputation spread far beyond Ottoman borders. European ambassadors described their discipline with admiration. Enemy commanders studied their formations. Military reformers attempted to copy their organization. Janissaries had become more than soldiers. They had become the model for the professional standing armies that would later dominate Europe. But success brought an unexpected danger. The more victories they achieved, the more influence they gained. They guarded the Sultan, protected the capital, controlled key fortresses, and gradually
ancient walls
began to realize just how powerful they had become. For nearly 3 centuries, the Janissaries had been the pride of the Ottoman Empire. They had conquered kingdoms, captured great cities, defeated Europe's finest armies, and helped transform a small frontier state into one of history's greatest empires. History has a cruel lesson. Institutions that build an empire can also become the reason for its decline. As the Ottoman Empire grew richer, the Janissaries changed. Strict discipline that had once defined them slowly began to fade. The old rules became weaker, standards became lower. Over time, new recruits were no longer selected only through the Devshirme system. Many positions were inherited by the sons and relatives of existing Janissaries.
The Sultan's army advances.
Influence and political connections.
Ancient walls begin to
Elite
crumble.
military corps that had once been chosen for ability gradually became an organization driven by privilege. Training suffered. Discipline weakened. Loyalty shifted. Instead of serving only the Sultan, many Janissaries began protecting their own wealth and influence. By the 17th century, they were no longer simply soldiers. They had become businessmen, shop owners, craftsmen, moneylenders. Many spent more time inside the markets of Istanbul than on military training grounds. Yet despite their changing lifestyle, they still possessed enormous political power. No sultan could ignore them. Whenever reforms threatened their privileges, the Janissaries responded with force. They protested. They mutinied.
The Sultan's army advances.
They murdered the very rulers they had sworn to protect. Several Ottoman sultans were overthrown with Janissary support. Government ministers lived in constant fear. Even grand viziers understood that angering the cours could cost them their lives. The army that had once defended the empire had become one of its greatest internal threats. Meanwhile, Europe was changing. Military science advanced rapidly. Professional armies introduced new drilling techniques. Modern artillery became more accurate. Firearms evolved. Military academies trained highly educated officers, but inside the Ottoman Empire, meaningful reform became almost impossible. Every attempt to modernize the army faced fierce resistance from the Janissaries. They feared losing their influence. They feared losing their privileges.
The Sultan's army advances.
They feared change.
Ancient walls
European powers continued modernizing. The Ottoman military gradually fell behind. Battlefields that had once showcased Ottoman superiority now exposed its weaknesses. Defeats became more frequent. Territories were lost. The empire's military advantage slowly disappeared. By the early 19th century, one man decided that enough was enough. Sultan Mahmud II believed the empire could no longer survive with an army that refused to evolve. Unlike earlier rulers, he understood that compromise would never succeed. Janissaries had become too powerful, too independent, too dangerous. In 1826, Mahmud introduced plans to build a modern European-style army. Exactly as expected. Janissaries rebelled and marched through the streets of Istanbul.
Army advances.
They overturned their sacred cauldrons, the ancient symbol of open revolt. For centuries, that act had forced sultans to negotiate. This time, the response was different. Mahmud too had prepared carefully. Loyal artillery units surrounded the Janissary barracks. Religious leaders publicly declared the rebellion unlawful. The Sultan gave a single order. Ottoman cannons opened fire. Barracks exploded into flames. Buildings collapsed. Thousands of Janissaries were killed during the assault. Others attempted to flee. Many were captured. Many were executed. Surviving members of the corps were exiled across the empire. After nearly 500 years of history, Janissary corps officially ceased to exist. The event became known as the Auspicious Incident.
The Sultan's army
Mahmud
advances.
II, it marked the beginning of
Ancient
military
walls begin to
modernization.
crumble.
To others, it marked the violent end of one of history's most famous military organizations. But despite their dramatic downfall, the legacy of the Janissaries never disappeared. They proved that discipline could overcome numbers, that training could defeat tradition, that loyalty, organization, and professionalism could reshape the balance of global power. For centuries, they stood at the heart of Ottoman expansion across Europe, Asia, and Africa. They inspired military reforms far beyond Ottoman borders. They left behind a legacy that historians, soldiers, and military academies continue to study today. From the walls of Constantinople to the battlefields of Europe, the story of the Janissaries remains one of the most extraordinary military stories ever written.
Advances.
Elite soldiers who had
Ancient
once
walls
obeyed
begin to
every
crumble.
command, without question would soon discover that they possessed something even more valuable than military strength: political power. That power would eventually threaten the very empire they had helped build.